Joshua did not map out the marching plans in the wilderness for the Israelites. They had to trust the silence of that cloud and just follow it. Paul did not choose his method of travel to Rome. Look at Acts 23 and 11. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome." Oh, Paul is so excited because they have a great church in Jerusalem. Everything's going wonderful. There's great things happening. And now God says I get to go to Rome and do the same thing. So he grabs his Bible. Man, he's waiting on the crusade to start. You know what? Silence of God walked in. You see, sometimes there is a great word from God, because this was a word from God. Go bear witness of me in Rome. Paul had no idea how he was getting to Rome. Oh, but I'm sure he read a lot of things into that. I'm going to be escorted. We're going to have a church there. God's going to do this and that. So he gets this great word, and then God goes totally silent. And I'm going to tell you something. That has happened so many times in my life, I could not even count them. I will hear a great word from God. Something will be spoken to me, and then the silence of God enters, and I think, did I even hear God? You know how Paul got to Rome? As a prisoner. It wasn't a flaming evangelist on a crusade. He was a prisoner bound up. And you know, he waited years in prison. Captive, bound, in prison, and in the will of God. Acts 24:27. After 2 years, Porcius Festus came into Felix's room, and Felix, willing to show the Jews a pleasure, what did he do? Left Paul bound. Now that's after 2 years. Paul thinks, okay, it's going to happen now. And somebody comes in. No, they left him bound. Where was God's delivering power? Why was he silent? Where was that word I had heard about preaching in Rome? Paul was learning complete trust. He had a lot of books in the Bible to write. And you know what? God had to silence him a lot of times and put him in a prison somewhere for that to be done. I love what Paul says in Acts 26:2. Just those first few lines. I think myself happy. Doesn't matter how silent God is. Doesn't matter what kind of wilderness or desert I'm in. I think myself happy. Not because circumstances are helping me out here. Not because I'm shouting around the front of the church. I'm thinking myself happy even in the silence of God. Paul had been done wrong. It looked like God had forsook him, and much time had passed with no resolution to his problem. And he's thinking himself happy. Even in God's silence, it was no obstacle for Paul. Because you learn dependency in the desert and the silence times that you don't learn anywhere else. That's something our flesh doesn't like, because we are so independent in our humanness. We want to be the supplier of our needs. Work harder, work longer, work more. And then I have more, and I am supplying all of my needs. And that's not what he wants. He wants to be the source. He wants to be your supplier. Now, that doesn't mean we can all quit our jobs and not work. It just means keep your priorities straight. He wants you to depend on him, so sometimes he backs off and gets quiet. And don't ever read into the silence of God failure on your part. It's really trust. And when it's silent from God, guess what I have? If he's not saying anything, all I have to do is open this up, and I can find him again. Jesus took them to the desert. He did not take them to an oasis. They had been too busy. They had much to do. Too busy to even eat. Working for God. He said, it's desert time for you. Look at Luke 9 and 11. This is what happens after all the desert time that he takes them. Luke 9 and 11. And the people, Luke 9 and 10 is where we read that he took them to the desert. And the people, when they knew it, followed him, received them, spake unto them of the kingdom of God, and healed them that had need of healing. After time in the desert, that's what happens. People follow. People receive. They talk about the kingdom of God. They lay hands and the sick are recovered. Don't despise the obstacles. Overcome them. Learn through them and find out that your true destiny is in intimacy with him. That's it. Has anybody here ever had a prophetic word spoken over them or a promise from God given to you? Does anybody, take your hand down, has anybody here ever had that and it's unfulfilled? Wow. Let me explain something about prophetic words. Prophecies that people give to you, God gives to you through people, do not show process. They show the future. That's prophetic words. And boy, you can get up from hearing that word and you are going to take the Singapore city by storm.
All right.
And then nothing happens. And we get weary and well-doing and we're like, that wasn't from God. I didn't hear that. That preacher must have missed it. That can't be, that could not have been for me. Prophecy never shows process. Process is from God. Keep walking. Remember what I told you last night? You don't know what's happening in heaven. Keep praying. Keep praying. So let's look at the 5 obstacles. Put them on the screen. I'm going to get out of the way so Mother can get up here. Time, place, tiredness, mental, and silence. Say no more excuses. Everybody can find time. You know what? You all have the same 24 hours a day. Everybody does. Those that spend 2 or 3 hours in prayer don't have 26 and 27 hours a day. It's not special dispensation for them. They have the same 24 hours you do. They just choose to use them differently than you do. So time's not the problem. Love's the problem. Place is not the problem. Well, I can't get to the church. I live too far away. There's no place for me to pray. That's not the problem. Everybody can find a place. And please